Marcus had been through more battles than he could count. A soldier for over a decade, he had faced countless enemies, fought in harsh conditions, and survived it all. He had learned how to stay calm under pressure and keep his focus when everything around him was falling apart. He was a battle-hardened soldier, a man who had seen the worst of war. His latest mission brought him to the alien planet of Ralnax, a world known for its hostile terrain and even more dangerous inhabitants. The planet was in the middle of a fierce conflict, and Marcus's unit had been sent to gather intelligence on the alien empire that ruled over it. The war had been raging for years, and the human forces had been losing ground. Marcus and his team had been moving through dense, alien forests, avoiding enemy patrols and keeping a low profile. Their objective was simple: infiltrate the alien fortress, gather information, and get out without being detected. But as they neared their target, something felt off. Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. They approached the fortress under the cover of darkness, using the dense forest for camouflage. The structure before them was massive, towering over the landscape like a dark shadow. It was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen before: tall, sleek, and intimidating. The walls seemed to pulse with energy, and the air around it crackled with an electric charge. Marcus signaled his team to hold position. They had to be careful. The fortress was heavily guarded, and any mistake could lead to disaster. As they crept closer, Marcus's sharp eyes caught movement near the entrance. A figure, cloaked in shadows, appeared at the door. "Stay low," Marcus whispered to his team, motioning for them to spread out. They moved silently, taking cover behind large rocks and trees. The figure at the entrance didn't seem to notice them, and Marcus's heart raced as he waited for the right moment. His hands gripped his weapon tightly, ready for action. Suddenly, the figure turned and disappeared inside the fortress. Marcus gave a silent nod to his team, signaling for them to move forward. They crept closer to the entrance, carefully avoiding the guards posted around the perimeter. As they reached the door, Marcus paused, his senses alert. Something was wrong. He could feel it in his bones. Inside the fortress, the air was cooler, and the walls seemed to close in on them. The silence was eerie. Marcus's team split into pairs, each taking a different route to cover more ground. Marcus moved ahead, relying on his instincts to guide him through the labyrinth of corridors. The deeper he went, the more he felt the weight of the place pressing down on him. It wasn't long before Marcus found himself standing in front of a large, reinforced door. It was different from the others in the fortress, strangely pristine, as if untouched by time. The door was locked, but Marcus's military training made quick work of it. He carefully disabled the security system and pushed the door open. Inside was a chamber unlike anything he had ever seen. The walls were adorned with strange, glowing symbols, and the air was thick with the scent of something foreign. In the center of the room stood a tall, alien figure. She was beautiful in a way Marcus had never imagined, with long, flowing hair and sharp features that seemed to radiate an otherworldly grace. But it wasn't just her appearance that struck him. There was something about her presence that made the room feel charged with energy. Her eyes, though alien, were filled with a sadness and strength that spoke of a lifetime of hardship. She stood there, calm and composed, as if waiting for something. Marcus's heart skipped a beat. He had been trained to fight, to kill if necessary, but standing in front of this alien princess, he felt no urge to raise his weapon. He was confused. He had expected an enemy, but what he saw before him was something entirely different. A prisoner, perhaps, but not an enemy. As he stepped into the room, the princess turned to face him. Her eyes locked with his, and for a moment, the rest of the world seemed to fade away. There was no fear in her gaze, only an unspoken understanding, as if she knew exactly who he was, even though they had never met. "You're human," she said, her voice soft but clear. Her words were strange, but Marcus understood them through his translator. You came for me. Marcus took a step back, his mind racing. He had no idea what she meant, but there was something about her that felt familiar, as if he had been drawn here for a reason. He didn't know why, but he knew he couldn't leave her there. Not without answers. The princess regarded him quietly, her expression unreadable. The air between them was thick with tension, but also with something else, a sense of fate, of destiny. Marcus couldn't explain it, but he felt it in the depths of his soul. He lowered his weapon, not because he wasn't prepared to fight, but because something told him that this moment was different. There was something important happening here, something that would change the course of the war and his life forever. Marcus stood in silence, unsure of how to react. The princess, this alien woman, had spoken to him as if she had known him all along. There was no fear in her eyes, only a calm that unsettled him. He had expected to find an enemy, but what he had found was something entirely different. A captive, perhaps, but there was something more to her, something he couldn't explain. He glanced around the room, still taking in the strange symbols that adorned the walls. The air felt thick with energy, and the weight of the place seemed to press down on him. It was clear that this wasn't just any ordinary room. Everything about this place spoke of power, history, and mystery. The princess stepped closer, her gaze never leaving Marcus. There was a quiet strength about her, a silent confidence that drew him in. She was clearly not just some prisoner. There was something regal in her posture, a sense of authority even though she was locked away. "I know who you are," she said softly, her voice carrying across the room. Marcus didn't respond immediately. He didn't know what to say. How could she know him? He was just a soldier, one of many. He had no special connection to this place or its people. Yet, somehow, she seemed certain. The princess continued. "Your name is Marcus. You have fought in many battles, on worlds far from home. You have been to places that most people can only dream of, but they are not the places you belong. You are a legend, a warrior of great renown." Marcus shook his head, feeling a mixture of confusion and disbelief. "I'm not a legend," he replied. "I'm just a soldier, doing my job." She smiled, a faint but knowing smile. "You may not see it, but the stories of your courage have spread across the stars. People on my world have heard of you, even though you may not know it. You have earned the respect of many, even if you don't realize it." Marcus felt his heart race. The thought of being a legend, of having his name known in distant corners of the galaxy, was something he had never imagined. To him, it was just about survival, about getting through the next battle. But hearing it from her, from someone so far removed from Earth, made him question everything he thought he knew about himself. "Why are you here?" Marcus finally asked, his voice steady but laced with curiosity. The princess's expression grew serious. She took a step back, as if gathering her thoughts. "I was once a princess, the heir to the throne of the Feldar Empire," she began. "My family ruled this planet and many others for generations. But all that changed when my uncle, a man I once trusted, betrayed us. He took control of the empire, seized the throne, and cast me aside." Marcus listened intently. Her words were heavy with emotion, and he could hear the pain in her voice, despite the calm expression on her face. "My uncle's reign has brought nothing but war and suffering," she continued. "He has manipulated the conflict between your people and mine to keep his power. He doesn't want peace. He wants control, and he will do anything to maintain it. But I can't just stand by and let that happen." Marcus's mind raced. He had thought the war was a simple conflict between two species, but now he realized there was much more at play. This wasn't just a fight for territory or resources. This was a fight for power, for a throne, and for the future of an entire empire. The princess paused, her eyes locking with his once more. "I escaped from my prison because I knew that if I didn't, my people would be lost forever. I am the last hope for my kingdom, Marcus. But I cannot do this alone. I need your help. Marcus felt a tug of sympathy for her. He had always fought for something greater than himself, but this was different. This wasn't just a battle for survival, it was a battle for justice, for the restoration of a broken empire. He had always been a soldier, a warrior on the front lines. But now, he found himself in a position to make a real difference. "You want me to help you reclaim your throne?" he asked, his voice steady. The princess nodded. "Yes. Together, we can unite the factions of my people. We can bring an end to the war and restore peace. But it will not be easy. My uncle controls the empire's armies, and he will stop at nothing to see me dead." Marcus thought for a moment. He had never been a leader, never been someone to strategize or plan long-term. He was a soldier, plain and simple. But there was something in the princess's words that made him want to help her. Maybe it was her determination, or maybe it was the way she had looked at him as though she truly believed in him. "I'm not a politician," Marcus said, looking down at his weapon. "I don't know how to rule a kingdom." "You don't need to rule," the princess said softly. "You just need to help me win the war. With your experience, we can lead my people to victory. You've already fought in countless battles. This one will be no different. But now, you'll be fighting for something that matters." Marcus looked at her, her calm expression now filled with a quiet intensity. He wasn't sure what he had gotten himself into, but one thing was clear: this was no longer just about survival. It was about making sure that the galaxy didn't fall deeper into chaos. "I'll help you," Marcus said, his voice firm. "But we do this together. I won't be anyone's puppet." The princess nodded, her smile returning. "I wouldn't have it any other way." The decision to help the princess weighed heavily on Marcus. He had spent his entire life as a soldier, trained to fight and survive, never thinking he would find himself in a situation like this. Helping an alien princess reclaim her throne was far outside the boundaries of what he had been trained for. But something about her calm determination and the fire in her eyes pulled him in. He couldn't ignore the feeling that this was the right choice. The princess, Maricela, seemed to sense his hesitation. She didn't push him, but there was an unspoken understanding between them. She knew that Marcus wasn't a man who could be easily swayed. He had to make this choice on his own. They spent the next few days together, discussing their plan of action. Marcus learned that Maricela wasn't just some royal figure, she was a warrior in her own right. She had been trained in combat from a young age, but it was her wisdom and leadership that truly set her apart. Her uncle, the usurper, had been a brilliant tactician, but he lacked the true heart of a leader. Maricela had the respect of her people, even in exile. As they moved deeper into the alien fortress, Marcus began to notice something strange. Maricela was more than just a princess, she was someone he had heard about before. He couldn't put his finger on it at first, but the recognition began to build. Her presence, her voice, even the way she carried herself, all of it seemed strangely familiar. One evening, as they sat together in a quiet corner of the fortress, Maricela spoke again. Her voice was soft, but the words carried weight. "You're wondering why you feel like you know me," she said, her eyes locking onto his. "It's not just your imagination." Marcus stiffened. He hadn't spoken his thoughts aloud, but somehow, she had sensed them. He had been trying to figure out why she felt so familiar, why her presence made his heart beat faster, like he had been here before. "I've seen you before, haven't I?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Maricela nodded. "Yes, you have. Not in person, but in stories. Stories that have traveled across the galaxy. Your name is known among my people. You are a legend, Marcus." The words hit him like a bolt of lightning. A legend? He had heard rumors, of course, of humans who had become famous warriors. But he never thought it would apply to him. He was just a soldier, nothing more. "I'm not a legend," Marcus replied, shaking his head. "I'm just a man who's been in a lot of fights. I do what I have to do to survive." Maricela smiled, but it wasn't a smile of mockery. It was a smile of understanding. "You don't see yourself as a legend," she said, "but my people do. They've heard of the human warrior who stood alone against impossible odds, who fought for his people without ever asking for glory. They've heard of the soldier who turned the tide of war on Earth." Marcus froze. He had no idea how much his past had traveled across the stars. Earth had been a distant memory for him in the years since the war had ended. He had thought of his past only in passing, but now it seemed that it had followed him to this far-off world. "How do you know all this?" he asked, still trying to process the idea of being known as a legend. "The stories of your battles are passed down in the old texts of my people," Maricela explained. "My uncle, the usurper, is afraid of you. He knows the power you hold. Not just in battle, but in the hearts of those who fight beside you." Marcus felt a pang of something pride, perhaps, or maybe it was something else. He had never sought recognition. He had never cared for the titles others placed on him. His only goal had always been to fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves. But hearing her words made him see himself in a new light. "Your people, they really believe in me?" Marcus asked, a slight disbelief in his voice. "They do," Maricela replied, her tone filled with conviction. "They believe in the courage of humanity. They believe that a human like you can bring hope to a broken empire. You've inspired them from afar, Marcus. You have more power than you know." Her words lingered in the air between them, and for the first time, Marcus felt the weight of them. He had always seen himself as just another soldier, someone expendable. But now, he understood that he had a greater purpose. He wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. He was fighting for something much bigger. He was fighting for the future of this empire and the people who believed in him. "I don't know if I'm ready for all that," Marcus said quietly, his mind still racing with the implications of what Maricela had said. "You don't have to be ready," she replied, her voice soft yet firm. "You've already proven what you're capable of. The battles you've fought, the wars you've survived, they've shaped you into someone who can lead. You may not see it yet, but you are the key to our victory." Marcus looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, he saw the weight of the responsibility she carried. She wasn't asking him to be something he wasn't. She was asking him to be himself, the soldier, the leader, the warrior, and to help her reclaim what was rightfully hers. "I'll help you," Marcus said, his voice steady and determined. "But I'm not doing this for glory. I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do." Maricela's eyes softened, and she nodded. "And that's why I know we'll win. Together, we can change everything." The days following Marcus's agreement to help the princess were filled with tension and urgency. They couldn't afford to waste any time. The usurper's forces were growing stronger, and every passing moment gave them more power to crush any hope of resistance. Maricela's plan was simple but bold: unite the scattered factions of her people, those still loyal to her family, and form an army strong enough to take back the throne. But she knew that she couldn't do it alone. She needed Marcus's strength, his experience, and his leadership to make it happen. Marcus wasn't sure what to expect, but as he spent more time with Maricela, he began to see how deep her commitment ran. She wasn't just fighting for her throne. She was fighting for the future of her people, for the countless lives that had been lost because of her uncle's reign. And she had a fire in her that Marcus hadn't seen in anyone for a long time. It was this fire that made him believe in her cause, even though he had no experience in leading armies or winning wars on the grand scale she was proposing. Together, they began to form their plan. They would start small, gathering supporters from the hidden rebel factions on the planet. The Feldar Empire was vast, with many loyalists scattered across the different worlds, but those loyal to Maricela had been hunted down and forced into hiding after the coup. Marcus's role was crucial. His reputation as a warrior had spread beyond the battlefield, and his presence would inspire those who had lost hope. They started with the closest ally, a man named Horan, the leader of a small but determined resistance group in the city of Carvaith. Horan was an experienced soldier, known for his cunning and resourcefulness. He had been one of the few who had managed to escape the Empire's grasp and go into hiding after Marizella's family was overthrown. The journey to Carvaith was dangerous, but Marcus and Maricela moved quickly and quietly, careful not to alert any of the usurpers' patrols. The city was on lockdown, with soldiers posted at every corner, but they managed to slip in unnoticed, blending into the shadows. When they finally reached Horan's hideout, they found the man sitting in a dimly lit room, surrounded by maps and old weapons. He didn't look surprised to see them, instead, he looked almost relieved. "I knew you'd come," Horan said as he stood up to greet them. His eyes flickered toward Marcus, a look of recognition in his gaze. "You're the one they call the Death Walker. The human warrior who fights like a beast." Marcus gave a brief nod, but he didn't have time for formalities. "We need your help, Horan. We're here to take back the throne." Horan didn't hesitate. He had been waiting for this moment for years, hoping for someone to rise up against the usurper. He had heard the stories, just like everyone else. Stories of a soldier who couldn't be stopped, a human who had taken on armies and lived to tell the tale. And now, that soldier was standing before him, offering the chance to restore the rightful ruler. "The usurper's forces are too strong," Horan said, his voice low. "We've been fighting a losing battle for so long. But with you, with your experience, maybe we can make a difference." Maricela stepped forward, her eyes locked onto Horan's. "We can make a difference," she said firmly. "But I need your loyalty, your strength. Together, we can take back what's ours. We can end the war." Horan hesitated for only a moment before he spoke. "You have my loyalty, Princess. And you have my people. We will follow you to the end." With Horan's group now on their side, Marcus and Maricela moved on to the next stage of their plan. They spent the following weeks traveling across the planet, meeting with other resistance leaders, some more hesitant than others. It wasn't easy convincing them to join the cause. Many had lost family and friends in the fighting, and trust was hard to come by. But with each new ally they gained, the resistance grew stronger. As they traveled, Marcus could feel the weight of the responsibility growing heavier. He was no longer just a soldier. He was becoming a symbol, a leader, someone people looked up to. And with that responsibility came fear. What if he failed? What if this alliance crumbled under the pressure of the coming war? But Maricela was always there, her quiet strength a constant reassurance. She never wavered, never doubted. Her belief in the cause and in him was unwavering, and that gave him the strength to push forward. The time finally came to confront the usurper. The small but growing army of loyalists and rebels had gathered in the mountains outside the capital, ready to take their stand. Marcus stood beside Maricela, looking out over the horizon. The wind blew through the trees, carrying with it the scent of rain. It was the calm before the storm, the quiet moment before everything changed. "We've come this far," Maricela said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "We can't turn back now." Marcus looked at her, his eyes filled with determination. "We won't. We fight for what's right. For the future of your people." They shared a brief moment of understanding, then turned to face their army. The time had come to make their move. As the soldiers rallied behind them, Marcus felt a surge of purpose. This wasn't just a fight for a throne, it was a fight for a new future. And he was ready to lead them into it, no matter the cost. The tension was thick in the air as Marcus and Maricela stood at the front of the newly formed army. The resistance had grown stronger in the past few weeks, but they were still outnumbered by the forces loyal to the usurper. The final confrontation was at hand. The time had come to take back the throne and end the long war that had ravaged Marizella's people. Marcus had been in countless battles throughout his career, but this one felt different. This wasn't just another fight for survival. This was about restoring justice, freeing a people from tyranny, and giving them hope for a better future. It was personal now. The stakes were higher than anything he had faced before. The army was ready. They had spent days preparing, making sure every soldier knew their position and strategy. It was a calculated risk. They would strike at dawn, taking the enemy by surprise. Marcus had helped to plan the attack, using his experience to ensure that their forces had the best chance of success. The usurpers' armies were strong, but they were also overconfident. They believed that the resistance had no chance. Marcus and Maricela knew that this was their opportunity to show them just how wrong they were. The night before the battle, Marcus sat by a fire, going over the details of the plan once again. He felt the weight of the responsibility on his shoulders. He wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was a leader, and he was about to lead an army into battle. His mind raced with the possibilities. What if they failed? What if too many good people died? He had seen enough bloodshed to last a lifetime, and the thought of losing more people made his stomach tighten. Maricela approached him quietly, her soft footsteps barely making a sound on the ground. She sat beside him, offering him a reassuring smile. "You're thinking too much," she said, her voice calm and steady. "We've prepared for this. We've done everything we can. Now we trust in our strength and the strength of our people." Marcus looked at her, feeling the weight of her words. She was right. They had done everything they could. The battle was now out of their hands. All they could do was fight for what they believed in. "I just wish it didn't have to come to this," Marcus replied, his voice low. "I've fought so many wars, and every time I think it's over, another one starts." Marizella's eyes softened. "I know. But this is different. This is a fight for our future, for the future of my people. This is the last war, Marcus. After this, there will be peace." Marcus nodded, though he wasn't entirely sure he believed it. Peace was a fragile thing, and war had a way of following people long after the fighting stopped. But he hoped she was right. For her sake, and for the sake of everyone who had fought and died for this cause. As dawn broke the next morning, the army moved into position. The soldiers were silent, their faces determined, their eyes fixed on the enemy lines in the distance. The sun had just started to rise, casting a golden light across the land. It was a beautiful sight, but there was no time to admire it. The battle was about to begin. Marcus stood at the front, leading the charge as the first wave of soldiers moved forward. The enemy's camp was just ahead, and their forces were spread thin. They had expected a smaller attack, not the full force of the resistance. The element of surprise was on their side. The sound of weapons clashing, shouts, and the roar of the battle filled the air. Marcus fought with everything he had, his every movement driven by the need to protect those who fought beside him. He had been in enough battles to know that war was never clean. It was chaos, and it was brutal. But there was no turning back now. He could see Maricela fighting alongside her people, her sword flashing as she cut through the enemy ranks. She was a force to be reckoned with, every bit the warrior she had claimed to be. Marcus felt a surge of pride as he watched her. This was her fight, her kingdom. And he was here, by her side, helping her take it back. The battle raged on, the resistance slowly pushing forward. It wasn't easy. The usurpers' forces fought hard, and their numbers were still overwhelming. But the resistance had something the usurper didn't hope. They fought not just for survival, but for something greater. They fought for the future. As they pushed deeper into the heart of the capital, Marcus could see the usurper's palace ahead. It loomed like a dark shadow against the rising sun. They were getting closer. The battle would soon be over, one way or another. Maricela was leading the charge, her eyes fixed on the palace. Marcus followed closely behind, cutting through any enemy that stood in their way. They were so close now, so close to the end. But just as they reached the gates of the palace, they were met by the usurper's personal guard, elite soldiers trained to protect the palace at all costs. The fight was fierce. Marcus found himself face to face with one of the guards, a towering alien warrior wielding a massive blade. The two clashed, their swords ringing out in the chaos of the battlefield. Marcus could feel the strength of the guard's strikes, but he held his ground. This was it. He couldn't afford to lose now. With a final, powerful strike, Marcus disarmed the guard, sending him to the ground. He didn't wait for the guard to recover. Instead, he moved forward, pushing through the last line of defense as Maricela led the way. The gates of the palace were now open. The usurper was waiting for them inside. The battle was far from over, but the final push had begun. With the gates of the palace now open, Marcus and Maricela led their soldiers into the heart of the usurper's stronghold. The palace loomed ahead, a monument to the cruelty and power of the man who had stolen her throne. It was a place that had witnessed betrayal, pain, and suffering, but it was about to witness the end of that reign. The palace halls were dark and quiet, the echoes of the battle outside barely reaching them. The walls were adorned with banners of the usurper's house, symbols of power and control. But Marcus knew that power could be fleeting. Today, those banners would fall, and they would be replaced with a symbol of hope. Hope that had driven them all this far. Maricela moved ahead, her eyes steely and determined. She was the true heir to this kingdom, and she wasn't going to let anyone, least of all her treacherous uncle, deny her birthright. Marcus followed closely behind her, keeping watch as they navigated the grand corridors. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing on his shoulders. This wasn't just another mission. This wasn't just a fight for survival. This was a fight for justice, for the future of an entire people. As they reached the inner chambers of the palace, the usurper's guards appeared. They were formidable, trained to protect their ruler at all costs. But they were no match for the alliance Marcus and Maricela had forged. They fought fiercely, but the resistance fought with a purpose, driven by the knowledge that the future of the kingdom rested on their shoulders. The clash of weapons echoed through the halls as Marcus and Maricela pushed forward. Marcus's blade moved with practiced precision, cutting through enemy lines with ease. He was a soldier through and through, but this was different. Each strike felt like it carried the weight of the world. This battle wasn't just about defeating an enemy, it was about restoring balance, about righting the wrongs that had been done. As they neared the throne room, Marcus could feel the tension building. The final confrontation was just ahead. The usurper would be waiting for them, ready to defend his reign with every last breath. Marcus wasn't sure what he expected to find, but he knew that this was the moment that would determine the future of the Feldar Empire. The throne room doors stood before them, tall and imposing. Maricela stopped in front of them, her hand resting on the door. She looked back at Marcus, her face a mask of resolve. "This is it," she said, her voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside her. "The last battle." Marcus nodded, understanding the gravity of the moment. They had come so far. But the cost of victory was never easy, and he knew that this battle would leave scars on them all, no matter the outcome. Maricela pushed the doors open, revealing the throne room. It was a grand hall, its walls lined with dark stone and golden tapestries. At the far end, sitting on a massive throne, was the usurper. His cold eyes flickered with both surprise and rage as he saw Maricela and her army enter. "So, it's come to this," the usurper sneered, his voice dripping with arrogance. "You think you can take what is mine? You are nothing, just a lost princess with delusions of grandeur." Maricela stepped forward, her eyes fixed on him with unwavering determination. "It's over," she said, her voice clear and strong. "You've had your time, but your reign ends today." The usurper's face twisted into a scowl, his hand gripping the armrests of his throne. "You'll never defeat me," he spat. "I am the ruler of this empire, and you," he paused, glancing at Marcus. "You are nothing but a human. You have no place here." Marcus stepped forward, his eyes locked on the usurper. "I may be human, but I fought for something greater than myself. And I won't let you destroy this world any longer." The usurper's laugh echoed through the throne room, harsh and cruel. "You think you can defeat me? I am the one who controls the empire. I am the one who holds the power." But his words faltered as he looked at Maricela, who had taken her place beside Marcus. She stood tall, her presence commanding, her eyes filled with a quiet strength that seemed to pierce through the usurper's arrogance. "You've taken everything from my people," Maricela said, her voice low but filled with authority. "But you won't take this from me. This is my throne, and I will reclaim it." The usurper stood up, his hand reaching for the sword at his side. "Then let's end this," he said, his voice filled with venom. The final battle had begun. Marcus and Maricela charged together, their movements synchronized as they faced the usurper. His blade clashed against theirs, sparks flying with each strike. The battle was fierce, and the usurper fought with every ounce of strength he had, but he was no match for the combined might of the resistance. They had come too far, sacrificed too much, to let him win. As the fight continued, Marcus's mind was focused on one thing: protecting Maricela and making sure that the usurper's reign ended here. He had seen enough of this kind of violence. It was time for it to stop. With a final, decisive strike, Maricela's sword pierced the usurper's heart. He fell to the floor with a thud, his reign over. Silence filled the throne room. Maricela stood over him, her chest heaving as the weight of what had just happened sank in. She had done it. She had reclaimed her throne. Marcus stepped beside her, his heart still pounding from the battle. "It's over," he said quietly. Maricela nodded, her eyes fixed on the fallen usurper. "It's over," she repeated, her voice a mixture of relief and exhaustion. But as they stood there, victorious, they both knew that the price of this victory had been high. The battle had cost them dearly, and there was no telling what the future held. But for now, they had won. The kingdom was free. The throne room was silent, save for the soft echoes of the battle that had just ended. Maricela stood at the front, her sword still in hand, her breath steady but heavy from the fight. The usurper lay on the floor before her, his body still, his reign ended. The moment they had all fought for had finally arrived. Yet, as Marcus stood beside her, he could sense that the victory, though hard-earned, left a strange emptiness behind. Maricela didn't look down at the usurper's body, instead, her gaze was fixed ahead, her expression unreadable. Marcus could see the weight of the crown she had reclaimed, not just in the symbols of power around her, but in her eyes. It wasn't relief that filled them, it was a mix of determination and the heavy responsibility of what came next. "It's over," Marcus said softly, his voice carrying the quiet of the room. Maricela nodded, her fingers tightening around the hilt of her sword. "It's over, yes," she replied, her voice strong, though there was a hint of something deeper there, a burden she couldn't shake. "But this is only the beginning." Marcus stood beside her, the weight of those words sinking in. He had been in enough battles to know that victory was often just the start of a much longer journey. There was rebuilding to do, and Maricela knew this better than anyone. The Feldar Empire had been torn apart by betrayal and war. It wouldn't heal overnight. "You've done it," Marcus said, turning his attention to the scattered remnants of the usurper's guards, who were now being subdued by the remaining resistance forces. "You took back your throne." Maricela's gaze softened, her eyes reflecting a quiet sadness. "I didn't do it alone," she said, her words sincere. Without you, none of this would have been possible. You showed me what true leadership is, Marcus. Marcus couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. He had fought beside her, but it was her strength, her vision that had inspired him. Her determination to fight not just for her kingdom, but for the future of her people, was what had turned the tide. He was just a soldier, but in helping her reclaim her throne, he had become part of something much bigger. I just did what needed to be done, Marcus replied, his voice humble. I'm not a leader. I'm just a soldier. You're more than that, Maricela said, her tone gentle but firm. You are a symbol. You've shown my people what it means to fight for something bigger than yourself. What it means to never give up, no matter how dark the world may seem. Marcus looked around the throne room, his eyes taking in the banners of the usurper's house, now replaced by the banners of Marizella's true line. There was so much to be done, but for now, they had won. The air was filled with the sounds of victory cheers from the resistance soldiers as they gathered around, their spirits lifted by the defeat of the usurper. I'm not sure what happens next, Marcus said quietly, his mind racing with the possibilities. We've won the battle, but what about the rest of the empire? What about the people who are still out there, who don't know what's happened here? Maricela turned to face him, her expression one of quiet understanding. We rebuild, she said simply. We unite the factions that are still loyal to me and show the rest of the empire that peace is possible. It won't be easy, but we can't keep fighting forever. We have to learn to live together, to rebuild the trust that was broken. The weight of her words settled in Marcus's chest. He had fought alongside her to defeat a common enemy, but now the real work would begin. It was one thing to win a battle, but it was another to heal a fractured kingdom, to unite people who had been at war for so long. It was going to take time, patience, and leadership qualities Maricela had in abundance. Your people will follow you, Marcus said with certainty. They've seen what you're capable of. They know you're the one who can bring them out of this. Maricela smiled, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. I hope they do. But it won't be easy. There are many who have suffered for too long. I can't undo their pain. I can only promise that I'll do everything I can to make things right. Marcus placed a hand on her shoulder, offering her a silent gesture of support. He understood the burden she carried. He had seen firsthand how the weight of leadership could wear on a person. But he also knew that Maricela had something that many leaders didn't: genuine care for her people, and the courage to fight for them, no matter the cost. We'll do it together, he said, his voice steady. You're not alone in this. You have your people, and you have me. Maricela looked at him, her expression softening. Thank you, Marcus. I don't know what I would have done without you. For a moment, they stood in silence, the quiet of the throne room broken only by the distant sounds of their soldiers celebrating outside. The battle had been won, but the future was still uncertain. The road ahead would be difficult, but Marcus knew that with Maricela leading the way, there was hope for a brighter tomorrow. As they stood side by side, watching the first rays of dawn break through the palace windows, Marcus couldn't help but feel that this was just the beginning. Together, they would rebuild the empire, restore peace, and ensure that the sacrifices made by so many would never be forgotten. The future was uncertain, but it was theirs to shape. And in that moment, Marcus knew one thing for certain: he was ready for whatever came next.